And welcome in to a very special show. This is the Arizona State High School Hockey Championship Preview Show. I'm Steve Peters. You can just call me Petey. Along with me today is the voice of Arizona State High School Hockey, Dylan Pescatore.
Petey, it's great to be with you here again. It's the best time of the year. And as you saw on Tuesday, as we're going to recap in a couple minutes, what a night at Mullet it was. And hopefully Saturday night for the championship can just be maybe halfway as exciting as it was on Tuesday.
I tell you what, Dylan, we say this every time we head down to the Mullet, and every time we think it can't top what we've seen before in this Arizona State High School Hockey program, and they do it every year. These games this last weekend were absolutely amazing. And I'll tell you this, or I'm going to make it sound like this a little bit of an ad here. Go to the game. Like, if you're listening to this show, go to the game. It's Saturday, 6 o'clock, Mullet Arena. And I tell you what, you don't want to miss the excitement inside that building because it was legit electric. That second game was unbelievable. We're going to get to that game. Actually, I think we're going to recap that one first, Dylan, because that was a little bit more exciting. Not there was a problem with the first game, but let's get to that second game with Mountain Ridge getting the big win. You want to break it down for us? What happened before we get to the video?
Yeah, let me give a quick summary. This is number one favorite Mountain Ridge, lost once the entire year. And they're taking on this upstart number 9 seed Desert Vista team that has gotten really hot over the past week or so. They were down 4-0 in the playing round. They came back, won that game, won a game a couple hours later on Sunday afternoon, and found themselves facing off with the number one team in Arizona high school hockey, Mountain Ridge Mountain Lions, on Tuesday night. And it didn't seem like a 9 seed versus 1 seed matchup at all. Desert Vista came out flying. They scored the first goal, and they were up 3-1 in the middle of that second period. And everyone's looking at each other like, wow, Desert Vista is actually about to do this thing. Well, Mountain Ridge, a team that had not trailed much all year. They really beat down a lot on their opponents. They were the most dominant team in Arizona high school hockey. A 16-1-3 record says it all. They came back down 3-1, scored 3 straight.
Let's get to that. But,
Yeah,
as we're going, let's talk about that, because this is, and we said it going into this game, this is the one I was worried about. You always want to have those close matchups, but you look at this one, and again, it happens. You look at the seeds. You look at 1 versus 9, and you go, oh, this one might be a little bit lopsided. But I tell you what, that Desert Vista team, they had so many players that had seen this before 2 years ago and been to the state finals, had won a state championship, and it had played significant. Kim was there. Kim got 2 goals in the state championship game 2 seasons ago. And Ensley was a part of that team, but he wasn't an integral part like he was in this one. And when you watch this comeback start, I want to show the goal that puts Mountain Ridge ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big goal by Mason McCosh. I tell you, one of the leaders of this team, plays defense, but I tell you what, if you go to the game on Saturday, big number 75, you might not know he's a defenseman. Dude is everywhere. He's up in the play. He's joining the rush. He's in front of the net. He's a big part of what happens here with this Mountain Ridge team. Now let's take a look at the goal that put Mountain Ridge up 4-3 late in the third period.
Hughes got in the way from the point. It goes wide. Babin in front, loose puck. Mountain Ridge's shot, they score! McCosh, 4-3 Mountain Lions.
I tell you, I don't know if you can hear the screaming kids in the background. Ironically, Mountain Ridge scores that goal right in front of the Desert Vista student section, and it was they rubbed it in a little bit. So that set the stage, right? It's 4-3, and now you're going, oh, finally, this is what we expected on a Mountain Ridge the entire time. But then what, Dylan?
And then Desert Vista finds a way, right? They want another chapter of their story. Minute to go, empty net, and PD play the video.
6-on-5, minute to go. Right off the draw, Kim kept it in at the blue line. Down at the half wall, Anderson. Anderson with room. Anderson shoots, save. Rebound is behind Siller and behind the net. DB still with possession. Back to Kim at the blue at the top of the circle with 45 seconds. Ensley shoots.
Literally get chills watching that. It was unbelievable. We sat there And the storybook endings that we've seen in Arizona high school hockey over the last, this will be our 4th championship calling together. It's absolutely amazing. And you hear the names we called during that, or you called. I just sat there and watched like a fan. But it was Kim. Kim made 2 big plays, kept the puck in at the blue line, and then he pulls the defender over to throw the puck in the middle of the ice to Ensley. It's a great play by Kim. And he's a guy that's been there. And they got their big players to make big plays.
Absolutely. That Desert Vista team has nothing to be ashamed of. That was a great, great performance and an awesome moment. Like you said, that was only a semifinal game with that moment. Imagine what it's going to be like on Saturday with the crowd packed at Mullet.
I can. And I had, the hair was standing up on the back of my neck when that was all going on. And I said, I couldn't believe it. And Todd Walsh was there, former voice of the Arizona Coyotes. And I looked over at Todd and he just like shook his head. Like he couldn't believe it. I think he was surprised to see how exciting this contest was. But as this went to overtime, then it started to show that Desert Vista had played 3 games in 4 nights. I think Desert Vista, I don't want to say limped through, but they barely got through overtime. If there's 5 more minutes in this game, I think Mountain Ridge wins this one in overtime. It was much different energy levels. Don't you agree?
I agree. And you can't blame Desert Vista. Look, they had to go through tough battles in the first few rounds. Notre Dame is not a normal 8 seed. That's a very tough team to beat, especially down 4-0. And then the next day they have to face off with Flagstaff with 14 wins this year. They get the off day Monday, and then they're right back at it against the number 1 team in Mountain Ridge. They got through OT. They had a few chances at the start of OT, but like you said, they started to get a little tired, and then it was time for the shootout.
Yeah, and in the shootout, you want to have your big players be your big players. And when you get to Mountain Ridge, there's 2 guys that we talked about, not just all night, but all season. And that's Babin and McCosh. And when Babin got a chance in the shootout, he went prior to McCosh. And it's five-person shootout, just like international rules. And if it's still tied, you continue on from there. But here is the first opportunity for Babin in the shootout.
And here he is, the sophomore, Camden Babin. First in Asha in points of the sophomore. The best forward in D1 against Keeler. Top of the 3rd. Scores. Camden Babin.
I like the call. Scores. And then it was you expected that one, Dylan.
Look, it's hard not to expect him to put the puck in the back of the net, right? He had 46 points in 18 games this year.
Yeah, he's an absolute elite player, and he's in on almost all of the offense for this Mountain Ridge team. His ability to make plays, get to the net. He's quick enough to get up the ice. He drives the net hard. He's got a great shot. Like, he does all of the things you want a skilled offensive player to do. Checks all the boxes. And then it comes down to another one of their big players, and shoots a little bit later in this shootout. And we already talked about him once, but let's take a look at Mason McCosh in the shootout.
Mason McCosh, tied for first in Division I in goals. A junior D, one of the best players in D1 this year. Here comes McCosh. Down the right side, McCosh into the forehand, he scores.
Dirty little play. I will say this, and it's just me. I like it when guys come in buzzing on the shooter. I like to see the guy flying in, and I got to get it. Works. It works. McCosh put a nice move and was able to put it by the goaltender. And then the pressure's on. The pressure's on Desert Vista. They score. They continue the shootout, and they continue to go on to the 6th round. If they don't score, this game's over, and Mountain Ridge is heading to the state championship. So let's take a look at Desert Vista's final chance in the shootout.
He must score to extend this game. Mountain Ridge gets a save. They're going to the championship. Tague to the net. Tague, saved by Silver. Mountain Ridge is going to the championship game.
The best part of that is a little bit of taunting. You might have seen a flag in college football there, a little taunting of the Desert Vista student section by Mountain Ridge, but that just shows you the kind of excitement in that building and how loud it got and how exciting it was. Everyone in the building was on their feet. That was a huge win for this Mountain Ridge team, a team that came in at number 1. Everybody expected them to be in the state finals, but they didn't think they'd have to go through a shootout of a 9 seed to get in.
Not at all. That was the biggest test of the season for them, no doubt. Pete, you mentioned how loud it got. I was surprised it got so quiet every time Desert Vista shot, right?
It was insane. There was something because the Desert Vista had a large student contingent there, and I tell you what, when Mountain Ridge scored, they were noisy. I wouldn't say loud, but you could hear them. But when
Mhm.
Desert Vista shot, it was like literally, it was like the shooter and the goalie were the only two people in the building. It was almost eerie
It
until the
was.
shot was over. It was a fantastic experience. I'm so thrilled to be a part of what Asha does here in the state of Arizona and what they've done for high school hockey. This event has grown. This league has grown. This is amazing what this Asha has and Kenny McGinley has been able to do for Asha. So
He's the best.
let's get to this. That's the first game of the night, which we're talking about second. We're going to talk about Hamilton Huskies against the Pinnacle Pioneers. Why don't you give us a little idea of what this one went down to?
Yeah, Pinnacle number 2 against Hamilton number 4, and Hamilton had to beat Basha Perry in the quarterfinal round. They did 4-1, and Pinnacle took down Centennial 3-0 in the quarterfinals, which is how these two teams met. Two very skillful teams, and we talked about it. We thought Hamilton had the goaltender advantage, and they probably did. I think Seligman played very well, but Mark Michelson was even better that night. He had a shutout against Hamilton in the 3-0 win. Let's look back at the Pinnacle goals starting in the first period.
Nice move by O'Mahony as he enters the zone. Cooper O'Mahony shoots, he scores! Cooper O'Mahony, the defenseman, flips it up, puts it in. 1-0 Pioneers.
Pete, that was such an important goal. I don't mean to cut you off, but that was so important because so much came out of this game as, wow, how is Pinnacle going to beat Dom Seligman and how great he is in net? And Cooper O'Mahony had the shot of his life right there to pick that corner, top shelf. He's a great offensive player, but that was a very important goal for the Pioneers.
Yeah, it was an elite shot for O'Mahony. And when you talk about the offense of this Pinnacle Pioneer team, he's a name that doesn't often come up. I mean, you're talking about some of the skilled guys, and we're going to get to them later as we preview what this Saturday game might look like. I think it was a guy that I didn't have on my bingo card breaking open the scoring for Pinnacle. I will say this about the Pinnacle game with Hamilton versus the Mountain Ridge game with Desert Vista is the intensity and the speed from the opening faceoff. The Mountain Ridge game, both teams were buzzing and they were using their speed up and down the ice. It was a race right from the beginning. When you watch Hamilton and Pinnacle, it was almost like a prize fight. Like they were feeling each other out. They were just kind of waiting to see which way the game was going to go. It was a much different intensity, and I'm curious to see it as this continues on to Saturday, how that is going to come into play here. But let's get back to Pinnacle.
Let's go to goal number 2 for them. And it all starts on the power play in front.
Has Chitka in front, one shot, save, rebound, they score! Chitka on the power play, Pioneers 2-0.
Pete, how impressed were you last night, or Tuesday night, I should say, with Logan Chitka and his spot in front of the net?
It's interesting. He's a guy you're going to have to watch. And when you go to these games, look for him in front of the net for the Pinnacle Pioneers on the power play. You talk about players like that in the National Hockey League, like Chris Kreider, that he's just there, knows how to get in front of the goalie. He's a big body guy that screens, but he's also there for the rebound and the tips. I mean, he is an effective player. And I tell you what, Hamilton had a problem with him the entire game on the power play. I'll be curious to see if Mountain Ridge, how they deal with Chitka in front. Do they directly address it? Do they defend him? Do they get under sticks and try to get him out of there, or are they going to be more like Hamilton did, where they just kind of let him be there? And that was another huge goal for this Pinnacle Pioneer team, and you started to see them starting to will their way through this. This is a team that we know has the offensive ability, and if they just play their style of hockey for 45 minutes, they're an outstanding team, and that's what I think we started to see with Chitka.
Yeah, when Chitka scored, it really felt it because then Pinnacle kind of locked down the doors. And you saw a little bit of frustration coming out of the Hamilton Huskies. They got in the penalty box consistently. Pinnacle was on the power play, and they were getting pucks deep and forechecking well. Hamilton was kind of shooting themselves in their own foot, and that's not to take anything away from the Pioneers. They played incredible, and they had one more goal to finish this one off in a 3-0 win.
Get a piece of it. Illing has 45 seconds to work with. Kamen. Nafwa shoots, he scores! Power play goal, Mason Nafwa, 3-0 Pinnacle, and they can taste it now.
And you said this is on the power play, and this was the tale of this game for me. Is there's a big hit early in this game, and Illing, a Pinnacle, gets a cut, on his head and bleeding profusely, actually. So you see in the blood on the ice, which actually played into Pinnacle's favor, and the blood on the ice. And I'll tell you why. Because that hit, people got upset. Tempers were up, both sides, and you could see the emotions on both sides with this big hit. Pinnacle, I think there was some feeling that they wanted to see a penalty there. No penalty was called, and I think we said it during the game that we didn't think it was an egregious head contact hit, and there shouldn't have been a penalty. But you could clearly see Pinnacle was upset, especially Illing, and Illing on the bench was hot. And I think the pause to clean the ice, by the time this play was ready to resume again, I think Pinnacle had kind of found the coaches were able to calm things down. Everybody took a deep breath, and I think they got back down to a level where they're ready to go. And I'm not sure that was the same thing I could say about Hamilton, because their frustrations really started after that, because I think Pinnacle really started to get, maybe there's a few words said on the ice, but Hamilton had a hard time, and there was a parade to penalty box, and you saw 2 of those goals were power play goals.
Absolutely. And look, you never really have a game-changing moment in the first period like that, but that was probably the game right there. It's 1-0 Pinnacle already, and then they're going back on the man advantage after that hit. And like you said, it was a 6 or 7 minute stoppage because they had to clean the ice of the blood, and that allowed Pinnacle to calm down their emotions. And I don't know, I don't think if we have a 1 or 2 minute stoppage that's the case, because at times this and last year, Pinnacle's had trouble controlling their emotions. That was really big for them. I thought that showed a lot of maturity out of their team.
Yeah, it definitely did. And I think that was the difference, their ability to keep that in check and play between the whistles. And I think that's something that we're going to see against 2 teams playing for a title on Saturday, and emotions clearly get in the way. Emotions are part of it. And we saw that in the semifinals, but even more so in the finals, with more people in the building, a louder building, more at stake. It's who can keep their cool. I do think that's going to be a big part of this game on Saturday, is the power plays. But one last player I want to mention on Pinnacle, and you've already said his name, was Mark Michelson. Mm-hmm. And I actually got a chance to talk to Mark's mom after the game, because there was some confusion in this. I'm glad I get to clear this up on pronunciation. And I've been calling him Mickelson, and I wanted to apologize that it is Mark Michelson. And I don't think she cared how I pronounced it, as long as I said he was playing well, which I said I did. No, he was outstanding. And I'll tell you what, we weren't sure what we were going to see from Michelson in that semifinal game. We weren't sure how he was going to handle the pressure of this big game in this big building against a really good hockey team, and he was outstanding. He's going to have to do it again.
He is. And this Pinnacle team, I think what was very overlooked with them has been their defense. Michelson has been great. He's now faced 43 shots in these playoffs. In 2 games, he saved them all. 2 shutouts in a row, right? What? He only played 5 Division I games this year. He was mostly playing at Division II. Got the start in the quarterfinals against Centennial, made the saves he was supposed to make. I think he made some really key saves against Hamilton, saves that maybe he wasn't supposed to make against a great Hamilton top 6 team. But like you said, this is going to be his biggest test. This is Mountain Ridge. This is a team that scores almost 6 goals a game in the regular season. We saw their offense strike against Desert Vista quickly. He's going to have the game of his life against Mountain Ridge. And with everything that we've seen, there's no evidence to say that he cannot.
Well, and this brings us to Saturday's game. So I think it's time we talk about one. I think we need to think, how this matchup is going to look. But 2, I think that we've got to talk about some of the names that people need to be aware of before they step foot inside the mullet. And who should be those leaders that they need to be aware of, and who's going to get their team over the hump and holding the trophy at the end of this one. And let's start with Mountain Ridge, the team that has 1 loss, one regulation loss the entire season. And this team can score. Who are we looking out for on this Mountain Ridge Mountain Lion team?
Yeah, Petey, and that 1 loss you mentioned, it was to these Pinnacle Pioneers back in September.
What a story.
A 3-2 game. It was a really great game. The names on Mountain Ridge, we already mentioned Camden Babin, Mason McCosh. They're going to get their flowers, and for good reason. But some names that really go under the radar are their top defenseman, Kyle Rahela. He's a tall, heavy defenseman, moves the puck really well, skates well as well. Ben Jones, another really strong forward. Brady LeVake, who we saw make a good comeback in that 3rd period. And then a player that kind of goes under the radar for them is Braden Horman. He's a playoff player. He scores almost every playoff game he plays. And he can bring a lot to this Mountain Ridge team. We know their offense, and now we know their defense. And then Easton Stiller in net, which was kind of the question mark coming into this year for Mountain Ridge. Who was going to be their goalie? He's been really, really good. So those are the names for Mountain Ridge.
Yeah, and I would start with Stiller too, because you look at that shootout. He ends up making the save that puts them into this final game on Saturday. He played extremely well in that game, and Desert Vista was a better opponent than I was anticipating. Stiller had to be good, and even when they tied that game up, you see he had to stop that flurry in front of the net seconds before Ensley was able to tie that. I thought Stiller was very good, and he's going to have to be good against Pinnacle. I think this goaltending matchup is going to be a huge one to watch between Michelson and Stiller. I think it's going to be key, and whoever can play best is going to give their team an opportunity to win. I know you mentioned Jones too. Jones is a guy that with Babin and McCosh on the ice, you notice them. That's just who drives Mountain Ridge. But it's those ancillary players that are going to be the ones that make the difference in a game like this.
And how great has Ben Jones been this year, right?
Unbelievable.
This is his only season playing high school hockey in his senior year. And he's come back and he's been, like you said, your top guys, you need guys to back them up. He's one of them.
Yeah, he's got 15 points in 17 games. And he's a guy that's you're going to see him out there with Babin. You're going to see him trying to get the puck to Babin. But the other thing Jones does is he gets the net really well. And you talked about the heavy defenseman. Good grief, Rahela.
Yeah.
Buddy, head up coming through the neutral zone and head up. He's a big physical player and he plays that way and it can make a difference. We didn't see a lot of that in the Pinnacle Hamilton game, a lot of that physical style. I think you're going to see some of it here. And it's, can you be physical? And a player like Rahela, you got to say that too. Can he walk that line of physicality and being a presence on the ice without putting himself in the penalty box? And I think that's going to be very important for a player like Rahela, that he's got to have a physical impact in this game. That's who he is. But he's got to do it without getting in the penalty box.
Yeah, and these power plays for both teams tied for first, both of them. 19 power play goals in 20 games for both of these teams. So you go in the box, you're going to pay.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And both of them move the puck extremely well, and they have a bunch of skilled players when you get out there with the man advantage. But let's go to Pinnacle. Coming in as a number 2 seed. Let's talk about, they played a little bit different in these semifinal games than we saw from Mountain Ridge. When we talk about the names at Pinnacle, who are the names and the guys that we need to be aware of as we walk into that game on Saturday?
Yeah, I think Pinnacle had to subscribe to almost a playoff hockey style of play going into these playoffs, especially knowing they didn't have their goaltender of the past, their Anion Bennett, their Austin Chartle that they've had in years past. They had a guy who didn't have a ton of experience playing at D1. They had to back him up, and the defense has been great. The names for Pinnacle, we saw Chitka, Carson Kamen, almost 3 points per game in Division I this year, 44 points in 15 games. You talk back on their defense, Tyson Derryberry, Gavin Williams. They have very strong defense. But the player that makes them go, Petey, and I know you loved his game the other night, Mason Knopfler. We saw his goal, the third goal against Hamilton. He makes them go. He's a 200-foot player, and he brings everything to this Pinnacle team.
One of the things that Knopfler does, though, and you brought it up, is the 200-foot ability in his game. There are players on this Pinnacle team that are dynamic offensively, and Carson Kamen is one of them. Alex Illing is one of them. You talked about Chitka. This team can score. They're deep, and they provide a lot of offense. There's no question about it. But Knopfler, man, his motor is going, and it's going everywhere on the ice, and his ability to back check and get through the middle of the ice and make a play. I think it's going to be incredibly important in this game because of the speed and skill that you see on the Mountain Ridge side. You're going to need guys that can get back and defend and kind of push the pace from behind. And I think Knopfler is going to be one of those key players in this game. And look for him. He's number 27. And it's not just when he has the puck. It's when he doesn't have the puck that could be the key to this game for the Pinnacle Pioneers.
Easily. And PD, I think you have to look at this from a matchup standpoint. Mountain Ridge, the number 1 seed, they're going to have last change. If I'm Sean Babin, the head coach of Mountain Ridge, I want to put my best players out there when Mason Knopfler's not on the ice. That's going to be so key.
Agreed. I think the line matchup in this could be an interesting thing to watch, and you and I will be in the press box calling this one on Saturday, and it's one of the things we're going to look at, and hopefully we can keep everybody up to date on what's actually going on the ice. So let's look at some of the key matchups for this game. We talked about the Mountain Ridge offense a lot, and with one regulation loss in the entire season, clearly the offense is what drives this team. So the key matchup number 1 for me is the Mountain Ridge offense versus the Pinnacle Peak defense. Thoughts?
Pinnacle defense. I mean, they had great stats during the regular season, but this is a defense that has been their best in years. And PD, you know it, being around hockey, what wins in playoff hockey? Your defense and your goaltending. And they have 6 defensemen that they roll. This isn't like a team that rolls, one or two defensemen and then toss in a couple more. They'll play all 6 of them equally. Gavin Williams, Ethan Glantz, Dyson Derryberry. I'm missing a few, but they have a ton of really, really good defensemen on this team. Cooper Mahoney, we saw earlier, scoring that goal. This team is very strong defensively. Now, how they're going to defend Babin, McCosh, and on all the offensive firepower that Mountain Ridge has, that's going to be a question. But they haven't allowed a goal in 2 games. It's pretty impressive. And going back to the regular season, last 6 games, they've only allowed, or check that, last 4 games, they've only allowed 4 goals total.
Yeah, what's interesting to me about Pinnacle's defending is how are they going to be able to, and how important it is for them to start on time. And I think we saw that a little bit in the first game against Hamilton, how I don't know if we saw the best from Pinnacle in the first 8 to 10 minutes. I don't know if we saw their speed and their skill, and they can't wait that long against Mountain Ridge. If you wait to play against Mountain Ridge, you could be in for a tough night. So I think for me, the Pinnacle Pioneers have to start this game on time.
They do. And I got to give a shout out. This is on me, my fault. I did not give a shout out to our guy, Easton Stockford, who is a good friend of mine. Peter, you're going to be doing shows with him soon. He's so good at this media stuff.
Good. I mean, you're leaving me, but
I
this
know
is it.
It's going to be our last game on Saturday. We got to go out with a bang. We
Yeah.
got to go out with a great game. It's going to be our 4th and last one. And Pinnacle won the first one that we did together, right? So what we'll see is the first time we've seen Mountain Ridge in the championship since 2006 at the Division I level.
So let's talk about the second matchup.
Yep.
Which we talked about the Pinnacle defense, but let's talk about the flip of that. Let's talk about the Pinnacle Pioneers offense versus the Mountain Ridge defending. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, the Pinnacle offense is really so impressive this year because they have 2 top scoring lines. We've mentioned the names: Kamen, Illing, Chitka, Knopfler, George Hammond in there as well, Cole Iacono, etc. But their bottom 2 lines have played such an intricate part in their wins because they'll get the puck deep. They're going to forecheck. They're going to tire out some of those top lines. A player that I really think has a great game to him, and you have to watch out for him. You saw his brother, Clayton, Charlie Fox. He plays all situations. He's been great on the PK, and he's just that pest on the other team that's going to make things hard for you and make your offense go 200 feet. The Pinnacle forecheck has been so impressive for me against the Mountain Ridge defense that really I don't think they played their best against Desert Vista. They let up a couple odd man rushes. Desert Vista stretched the ice on them with their speed. They have to be much better if they're going to win this game on Saturday against Pinnacle. What did you think?
Yeah, it is interesting. The Pinnacle Pioneer offense, when it's clicking, is elite because it's deep. And I think what's interesting in this matchup is I think the Mountain Lions have a little bit more firepower. When you get Babin and McCosh are going, look out. What's going to be interesting is how long it's going to take either one of these squads to start to shorten their bench. Because when you shorten your bench, we saw what happened to Desert Vista in overtime against Mountain Ridge, is starting to get tired. So when you start shortening your bench down to 2 lines or even 2.5 lines, guys are going to get tired. And you're putting your best players out there every other shift. So it's which team finds himself behind that is forced to play their big players more often. And it could go either way. The one thing the Pinnacle has done all year is been able to roll 4 lines. And I think that's going to be a benefit for them early. But they can't be behind. You can't be chasing. Once you're chasing a game against Mountain Ridge, you might be in trouble, because we saw what happened when Mountain Ridge was behind trying to come back. When they're ahead, that's a spot they're not familiar with playing from behind. So I think it's, again, we talked about starting on time. I think Pinnacle, if they want to stay in this game against Mountain Ridge, they are going to have to come out prepared to play from the puck drop. And I think this first 10 minutes is very key for both teams to establish what kind of game that they are going to play in this championship matchup on Saturday.
And I think there's 2 ways to go about it. Mountain Ridge, they want to go fast, they want to stretch the ice, and they want to trade chances with you a little bit, right? Because they know they're going to bury a few. For Pinnacle, they want to stick to what they've done the past 2 games: deliberate, slow-moving, stagnant, choppy hockey. They can score with anybody. We know that. But when they are playing their best, they're getting pucks deep. They're doing the fundamentally things right, and they're making your team go 200 feet from your own goal line.
Yeah, and we talked about Mountain Ridge and their ability to play with pace. Here's the scenario I just want you to be looking for on Saturday night. The Pinnacle Pioneers are a team that they have their defensemen hold the offensive blue line. They stay up on the offensive blue line. They want to keep pucks in the offensive zone, and they want to maintain offensive possession through cycles and getting pucks to the net. So their defense are going to hold the blue. That's great when you keep the puck in. If you're a Mountain Ridge, you got to be looking to get the puck past that layer and looking for races through the neutral zone and trying to create odd man rushes. And I think that's where Mountain Ridge might have the little advantage through speed through the neutral zone. So Pinnacle is going to have to be incredibly mindful of that. They're going to need back pressure. They're going to need guys backtracking, and they're going to have to either they got to bail out when they see the big players coming. When you see Babin and McCosh coming, you might have to bail instead of holding that blue line, or you're actually going to have to hold the blue line and make sure you either get the puck or the player. And so I think that's one of the key areas on the ice. Usually it's net fronts, but I think the offensive blue line for the Pinnacle Pioneers in this game is going to be a real big ground area for this team to cover. I think it's really important in this game.
That's going to be a key matchup. I mean, we saw it against Hamilton. Hamilton wanted to stretch the ice. They wanted to go and go and go. But at the end of a long shift, you got to go back and get that puck again. You got to go retrieve it back behind your net, because guys like Stockford and Glantz and Jamison Bell, they're going to keep that line. It was like a brick wall trying to get it through them against Hamilton, and they just couldn't play their game. That's something that you got to look out for on Saturday within the three periods that we're going to play.
And we're talking about brick wall. So let's get to the last line of defense.
Yep.
For both teams. We've already talked about both of them a little bit, but let's talk about the matchup between Stiller and Michelson.
Yeah, I don't know if I would give the check to either goalie in this situation. I think I have it in my mind maybe who is the better forwards, who is the better defense, and one goes either way. I think maybe Mountain Ridge has a little bit more firepower, like you said. I would probably, from what I've seen, probably take the Pinnacle defense over the Mountain Ridge defense, even though it's very close. Goaltending is a toss-up in my mind because Mark Michelson's a hot goalie. And you know it, Petey. Hot goalies can get you anywhere. I mean, look at Jonathan Quick with the LA Kings, 2012, 2014, and a ton of other examples. But he has been so good in these playoffs, and he's been that brick wall for them. On the other side, Easton Stiller had to deal with a lot of odd-man rushes, and he's going to have to come up with a lot of big saves against Pinnacle. He's going to see a team in Pinnacle that holds the puck a lot, and it's going to be their biggest test of the playoffs. It almost seemed in the regular season these two teams were destined to meet each other in the championship.
Yeah, I think this is the matchup we were hoping for, and we thought early this is the 1-2 matchup. But when you talk to the goalies, for me, I think Mark Michelson is as you said, he's hot. He's making unbelievable saves. Like some of the saves we saw on all four goaltenders, to be honest, were absolutely fantastic. But I think for me, Stiller made the saves he was supposed to make, and he made the big saves at the big moments. And he was able to make those saves in the shootout that propelled them to the game on Saturday. So for me, I agree. I think these two goaltenders are very even. I've seen we've called games that you've had goaltending mismatches. That's not what's going on here. These are two very good goalies, both playing very good at the right time. For me, this is going to be the one that which goalie can make the saves that they're supposed to make.
Yes.
Because we've said it before, both of these teams are offensively gifted, and they're both going to get chances. Hey, this is not going to be a 0-0 game. Sorry, goalies. It's not. These are two offensive powerhouses, so there's going to be great scoring opportunities, and there are going to be goals. For the goalies, for me, it's stop the ones you're supposed to stop. Don't give up a soft one from the blue line. Don't give up a goal that's a wrister from outside the blue. Don't give those up. If you can make the saves you're supposed to make, let your team's offense take over. I think that's the goaltender that's going to come out with the win.
Exactly. And maybe if you could find a small positive with Mountain Ridge is that Stiller had to make the big save in the big moment, the shootouts, the late game situations. Pinnacle, and all credit to them, they haven't had a really close, not competitive. Both teams have been competitive, but they haven't had a close guard a 1-goal lead in the third period playoff game yet. And with how these two teams are stacked up, they will probably have to be in a situation like that. That'll be up to Mark Michelson if he can make that big save. 4 minutes left, up 1, and Camden Babin's got the puck in the circle.
Yeah, and I'm not going to put you on the spot to predict a winner. I just want to sit here and say, let's hope we have a really good hockey game, because that's all we've ever, honestly, that's all we've ever seen when you and I get together to call a hockey game. We have never seen a bad hockey game in the Arizona State high school hockey playoffs ever. And so I'm anticipating the same thing.
Absolutely. At the start of the playoffs, Pete, a lot of people got on me because I picked Mountain Ridge and Flagstaff. I guess I went 1 for 2. A lot of credit to the Pinnacle Pioneers for making it to the championship. But I don't know, whatever it may be, whether it's just Asha Magic or us two in Mullet, we get classics. My favorite part about when we get these games, we get these big goals is I look over at you after a team scores a big goal and you take the headset off and you're going crazy and you're looking around. I love it.
Yeah, I tell you what,
Hopefully we get more moments like that.
it's hard not to.
Exactly.
The atmosphere is contagious in that building. I can't stress this enough. And I know I'm trying to be a shill for Asha here. If you like hockey, if you don't like hockey, if you like sports, you want to see teams competing for a championship, period. I'll watch playoff anything on TV, and I'm not kidding. If it's the playoffs and a championship, I'm watching it. I want to see that competitive level. That's what you're going to see here. Now, I'm telling you, it's really good hockey, but the excitement in that building is going to put it over the edge. Both teams are going to have their student sections just jumping. I know Pinnacle, I've seen how they turn out for a big game. I know the building's going to be buzzing. So Dylan, when, where, how do we get to this game on Saturday night?
Yeah, let's run it down. It's Saturday, February 1st, 6 p.m. at Mullet. The doors open at 5 p.m. Tickets on sale, like you see right there, ashaplayoffs.com. It's going to lead you to a Ticketmaster link. And the best part about this, PD, is it's $15 for anybody to get in the door. You can sit in that last row of the student section. You can sit on the glass if you get there early enough. So it opens at 5 p.m. It's going to be a great game. Now, the rules do change a little bit. We're going to have 17-minute periods in the championship game, ice cut between each period as well. And as we know from the last 2 championships, it's a game that you're never going to forget that you were at.
Yeah, and tell you what, those 17 minutes make a difference. These guys have been playing 15-minute periods all season long. Those 17 minutes make a difference. And I think with the Mountain Ridge game, if they had 2 extra minutes in the third period, I'm not quite sure how that one would have ended up. But this is a great matchup against number 1 versus number 2. Just like they scripted it at the beginning of the season. I can't wait. Dylan, final thoughts on Saturday's game?
Yeah, final thoughts. Pinnacle going for their first championship since the spring of 2022 when they beat Notre Dame back at the last game we had at Oceanside. And Mountain Ridge, a team that was, down in the dumps a little bit. They came back to Division I 3 years ago. 10th place finish in that year, 2nd place last year, and now looking to do it all and win the championship for the first time since the mid-2000s. It's going to be amazing. I'm so excited.
Well, I'm excited too, and I know I will be there. Dylan will be there, and I sure hope that you are there. Don't forget, Saturday night at 6 o'clock at Mullet Arena. I'll be there. And for Dylan Pescatore, I'm Steve Peters, and we will see you at the rink.